Street level, the Wall Street that is Occupy Wall Street. Wall Street is a symbol of bloody American capitalism. Wall Street. Another local, another Dallas Street, Another headquarters, every bloody multinational bank, multinational insurance companies, finance companies, manipulated operators, stock exchange, Wall Street. Americans say with the total joblessness, unemployment and poverty also, they are occupying Wall Street because they're so sick and tired of these so-called rich people. They themselves, the Americans, they are the capitalist society. They are against the rich bloody bankers, everybody.
America's financial heart occupied by protesters trying to get out a message about corporate greed. But this is no organized demonstration. CNN national correspondent Susan Candiotti takes us in depth. Susan, what's going on out on Wall Street?
Hi, Joe. Well, under normal circumstances, this is a public park near Wall Street that's usually fairly quiet. But not so for the past couple of weeks or so. It is filled with everything from protesters to drum beats to guitars playing and saxophones. And their message, and you put it right, is against corporate greed. 13 days and counting for a protest calling itself Occupy Wall Street, turning a public park into a mini campsite near New York's Wall Street. Their message, end corporate greed, they say, is killing America's economy. Solidarity forever. But will they be heard in Washington?
Politicians can be bought, political influence can be bought through political donations. This needs to be addressed.
But organizing isn't easy. There's no money for microphones, so protesters act like human megaphones to relay messages to the crowd.
Throughout the day.
Supporters come and go. Organizers claim they peaked at about 600 during a weekend demonstration, but numbers at the park dwindled to an average of about 200 this week. Admittedly, most of the time is spent trying to figure out what they're trying to say and how to organize. No one's in charge, and that's the way they like it.
We're gathered here in this place to join to craft that mission statement, to shape a statement of what it is we want and how we're going to get to it.
OccupyTogether.org boasts rallies were held or are planned in more than a dozen U.S. cities. CNN has confirmed one other in Chicago. In New York last weekend, 80 people were arrested in one demonstration held without a permit. Police say there's an internal investigation into their use of pepper spray during a confrontation. The video went viral on YouTube. Authorities say in retaliation, the group published the names of a police official's children, quote, to threaten his family. This New Jersey mother used a school holiday to take her 4- and 5-year-old to join a peaceful protest for a day.
We are 99%, the rich and the powerful are 1%. We all need to be a lot more equal than that.
Is it hard to put together a solution?
Very hard, very hard. That's why I'm skipping on my words here. There's so many ways you could come to the end to a solution. But, in the meantime, it's just kind of just awakening people up to know, what's going on out there.
The New York group insists it's staying put with no exit strategy. And police say they have no plan to move them out. So for the last couple of weeks, the numbers have been fluctuating up and down. And again, there's no telling how much longer everyone will be here. But, Joe, they're predicting that their movement will grow. We'll have to see.
Susan Candiotti, thanks for that great piece and that great reporting.
Who are just manipulating. Manipulate in the account of the people, on the account of the sales, that's all they do. So, and the economy collapsed. Kitta 10% jobless, poor people America, poor people are there, a lot of poor people are there. They come to live in community dining room and staying room and, boarding and, really bad actually. Okay, communism failed, failed capitalism. Okay, if capitalism collapse, it will be very good. Let a common man evolve as a human being who will have a shelter, 2 bloody food a day, a good food a day. அது கேரண்டி பண்ணனா அது எந்த இஸ்டமும் கிடையாது. இட் இஸ் ஜஸ்ட் சர்வைவலிசம். இட் இஸ் ஜஸ்ட் சர்வைவலிசம். அதுதான் வரப்போகுது. நாளைக்கு ஏற்கனவே லேமன் கொலாப்ஸ் ஆச்சு, அப்புறம் இது அது யூரோ ஜோன் கிரைசிஸ், கிரீக் ரியலி ஒன்று யாராவது ஒன்றும் பண்ண முடியல. தெரியுமா, அதுதான் அமெரிக்கன் பப்ளிக் தான் ஸோ ஃபெட் அப். தேர் ஆக்குபைங் வால் ஸ்ட்ரீட். யூ கான் ட்ரீம் லைக் தட். ஒரு 10 வருஷம் இது மாதிரி எதிர்பார்த்துக்க முடியாது. இப்போது அந்த மாதிரி ஆயிடுச்சு. ஸோ கேபிட்டலிசமும் இட் ஹாஸ் ஹேவ் இட்ஸ் ஓன் நேச்சுரல் டிகே. நேச்சுரல் டெத்து வரணும். அது நேச்சுரலாக சித்து பண்ணது. வேறு கம்யூனிட்டி கொலை பண்ண கம்யூனிட்டி ஓகே, கம்யூனிட்டி வந்து ஒன்றும் கிடையாது. கால் மார்க்ஸ் என்ன வேணால் சொல்லிட்டு அவங்க படி அது கொலை பண்ணிட்ட கம்யூனிஸ்ட்டை. ஓகே, அது சோவியத் யூனியனே இப்படி போயாச்சு. இப்போது இதுக்கு யார் இப்போ இந்த பூனைக்கு மணி கட்ட போகிறாங்க? அவனே கட்டிப்பாரா? ஒப்பாவே தனக்கு மணி கட்டி போகிறான். ரிலி சேட். எனக்கு கேட்டால் ரெண்டுமே பிரேக் டவுன். கம்யூனிசம் ப்ரோக்கன் டவுன். இப்போ கேபிட்டலிசம் இன்னொரு 10 இயர்ஸில் இது இட்ஸ் டோட்டல் டவுன் ஃபால். இல்லை நிறைய மூவிஸ் இருக்கு. லாட் ஆஃப் கான்செப்ட், லாட் ஆஃப் திங் எல்லாம் சொல்கிறாங்க. இட் இஸ் சிக்ஸ் சொசைட்டி. It's not a obesity, physical obesity. It's a financial obesity. பணம் கொழுத்த பணம், ஸ்டிக்கிங் ரிச், அதான் கொழுத்த பணம். ஒரு பேங்க்கில் கண்ணாடி இருந்தாலும் அவன் பார்த்தாங்க அவனோட ஃபைனான்ஷியல் ஒபேசிட்டி. அந்த பணக்கார குண்டுத்தன்மை எவ்வளோ அவனாலும் தெரியும். இது வரைக்கும் அவனும் பார்க்கல. இது ஹை டைம் டெவலப்டு சிஇஓ படி கார்பரேட் எல்லாம் வாய்ஸ் எல்லாம் பார்க்கட்டும், தன்னை கண்ணாடியை பார்க்கட்டும். எவ்வளோ ஃபைனான்ஷியல் ஒபேசிட்டி கோடியே சேர்த்துக்கிறது. ஒரு டாய்லெட்டில் ஒரு கோல்டன் டாய்லெட், ஒரு சிஇஓ ஒரு பேங்க்கில் ஒரு கோல்டன் டாய்லெட்னா 1.5 லட்சம் ரூபாய் ஒரு கோல்டன் டாய்லெட். நமக்கு இங்கே டாய்லெட்டே கிடையாது போகிறதுக்கு. நம்ம ஊரில் ஒயிட்டாக ரோடு காரில் போய் இருந்துட்டு வந்துடுவாங்க. நம்ம ஸ்டே பண்ணிட்டு அவ்வளோதான். டிஷ்யூ கூட வாங்க முடியாது. டிஷ்யூ அதே 35 ரூபாய்.
Jack Cafferty's here with the Cafferty File. Jack.
Today is the 20th day of protests down on Wall Street here in New York, and the movement is suddenly picking up steam all across the country. The demonstrators are critical of the growing economic gap in the United States. They say they take their inspiration from the Arab Spring, those protests that overthrew governments and dictators and continue to cause massive chaos in the Middle East and Africa. But in the beginning, here in New York, barely anybody even noticed. There were a few hundred people with signs peacefully walking around Manhattan's financial district talking about corporate greed and inequality. And when they were finally noticed, they weren't taken very seriously. Reporters made fun of them, saying they didn't even know what they were protesting about. Well, now the unions are joining in and supporting them, and the crowds are suddenly starting to look like this. There were thousands of protesters in Lower Manhattan yesterday. There have been hundreds of arrests, and it's not just New York. Protests are beginning to take root nationwide, including Los Angeles, Boston, San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, Seattle, Spokane, Philadelphia, Houston, Dallas, Tampa, St. Louis, Nashville, Tennessee, Savannah, Georgia, Hartford, Connecticut, and Washington, D.C. This isn't a joke, and the media would be well advised to take these folks seriously. Their grievances are real, their numbers are growing, and the rest of us would be well advised to start paying attention. So far, these protests have been peaceful for the most part, so far, but the more they spread and grow, the bigger the problem becomes for the federal government in Washington. Our government ought to take note. Protests over economic conditions and government cutbacks have turned violent everywhere in the world. People only take so much, you know. Here's the question. Are the protests spreading across the United States the sign of an American spring? Go to CNN.com/Cafferty File, post a comment on my blog, or go to our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. Wolf.
I'm going to be speaking about this very subject, Jack, with Ron Paul, the Republican presidential candidate, this hour, and Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont in the next hour. They have different perspectives. We'll see where they agree, where they disagree. Much more on this story coming up, Jack. Thanks very much. Getting some live pictures of the Occupy Wall Street demonstration spreading outside of New York City. These are live pictures coming in from Los Angeles right now. You see a crowd getting ready over there. And we also have some live pictures from here in Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital. You see the U.S. Capitol in the background right there. These demonstrations clearly are spreading. Let's go to Jack. He's got the Cafferty File. Jack.
The question this hour is, are the protests that are spreading across the U.S. the sign of an American spring? Matt in Illinois, let's hope so. If we don't become concerned with social justice, we'll become a third world country very soon. It's time to take the keys back and focus on what we need to do together to restore our standard of living and civility. Larry in Denver, not even close. Without unity of purpose, it gets cold and it's over. This is great press. Too bad there's no message. Think back to the 60s in Vietnam. What's the message here? When Americans get cold, they take shelter. Think this will be happening when the wind chill's 15 degrees on a cold November day? Rosalie on Facebook, yes, Jack, they are. People are becoming aware that they have sat on their bottoms for too long. Pat in Michigan, I believe it's the everyday worker saying enough is enough. When we were in school, we feared the playground bullies until one of us stood up to them and we found out they were really cowards. It's no different now, except the bullies have stolen our retirement money and our politicians have helped them. Sherry in Indiana, hell no, Jack. It's a sign of Americans, not a sign of American spring. It's a sign of George Soros, plus a lot of grossly ignorant people who appear to believe that we can spin straw into gold. Summer in California writes, call it what you will, the fact remains that everyday Americans are tired of being put last on the list. We ultimately pay for everything, yet in reality we have little or no say in how the country is being run or how the money is spent. The reason you see protests in the streets is because the government has either grown deaf to our pleas or has been rendered so ineffectual that we need to rethink the three branches of government. Come what may, I'm glad our voices are finally being heard, and the American people are finally doing something about this. And Olga in Texas says, I wish. I'm 70 years old, and I wish I had the mobility to go out there with them and walk the streets with them, all of them. If you want to read more on this, got a lot of email, go to my blog, cnn.com/Cafferty file, or through our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page.
So, I know, culture, America is 200 years old. 200 years old. We have 4,000, 30,000 old. That's measure it. India, 200 years old, society is big society. India, before UF invented Playboy and Bob Ganesh invented Penthouse, we Argenta Ellorala, 64 கடைகளை காமிச்சிட்டாங்க ஓப்பனா 700 வருஷத்துக்கு முன்னால 64 கடைகளை காமிச்சிட்டாங்க. இப்போ கூட எந்த கோயில்ல வேணா போறாங்க ஒரு சிற்பம் இருக்கும் நல்ல ஒரு அழகான படி ஒரு நல்ல பியூட்டிஃபுல் பூவ்ஸ் நல்ல ஒரு 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 பொம்பளை ஒரு ஸ்கல்ப்சர் இருக்கும். இது நம்மள பார்ட் ஆஃப் கல்ச்சர். எந்த கோயில் சிவன் கோயில் விஷயம் இருந்தா கூட அங்க ஒரு சிற்பம் இருக்கும் நல்ல அழகு பொம்பளை இருக்கு. இதெல்லாம் நம்ம கண்டுபிடிச்சி வருஷக்கணா இப்போ நீ சென்டென்ஸ் போயிட்டு வந்து ப்ளே பண்ணி
Those protests against Wall Street continue to grow across the country today. Here in New York, thousands of demonstrators descended on the financial district as big labor unions joined in. And many people down there asking the question, what are the people who helped create the jobs crisis doing to help the people out of work? ABC's Cecilia Vega spent the day in the middle of the protest.
It is a crowd that grows daily in size and diversity. Today, thousands of union workers marched in solidarity and joining a common cause, blaming bank greed for the country's economic woes. This afternoon, thousands marched from Manhattan's Foley Park into the heart of Wall Street.
America is fed up with just being forced into poverty.
Thousands of members from the nation's largest unions joining the cause today, from auto workers to teachers, service workers to actors.
It's what the freedom of speech was designed for.
Just a few weeks ago, there were only a few dozen people here in this park off of Wall Street, but today there are actually a few thousand. This is a protest that is growing not only here in this park, but online, thanks to social media.
Online, a website is getting hundreds of submissions from around the country, people posting their stories of economic loss, claiming to be part of a middle class hurt by the recession. The protests are spreading from cyberspace to streets all around the country. 50 cities now, from Salt Lake City to Topeka to Knoxville. The movement now garnering attention from politicians running for office, like Elizabeth Warren, who's vying for a Democratic Senate nomination in Massachusetts.
The people on Wall Street broke this country, and there has still been no basic accountability.
Observers of social history say the protesters' growing presence could be a major issue in the coming presidential election year.
If you can influence the conversation in the 2012 elections, then you've done something pretty amazing.
And well, it's not just people who are out of work who came out today. People with jobs left the office to march in the streets too.